I'm Patrick Bolton. I'm the band director.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for having me.
Of course, it's a pleasure having you here today. Everybody, welcome Mr. Rudman. He is a bassoon player with the President's Zone Marine Corps Band here to have a clinic with us today, and a virtual clinic. So I guess without any further ado, would you like to take it away for a little bit here? And
Yeah, absolutely. But as Mr. Bolton said, my name is Stephen Rudman. I'm a staff sergeant with the Marine Band, part of the bassoon section. And, the kind of group that we have here today is basically how I operate, and, working alongside with all of the lower end members of the woodwinds, low brass, low strings. That's kind of my bread and butter for my job and stuff like that. So it's really, really nice to be in front of all of you, great young gentlemen. And I think, since I see a lot of instruments out, we should just jump right into playing. I'd love to hear anyone play who wants to. If anyone, would rather not, I'm comfortable with that too. I have a little bit that we can also talk about, but basically I want this to run whatever is going to be best for all of you guys. So if anyone's super eager to play, why don't you go ahead. If you could just tell me your name, what instrument, although I probably will figure that out pretty quickly, and maybe what year you're in school, and that'll be great. I don't know if you want to, Mr. Bolton or Mr. Womack, I don't know if you want to go in a specific order or something like that, but
we might have a couple guys play for you. We've got Mr. Gomez here today. Mr. Gomez, are you present?
Yes, sir.
He is a bassoon player, and he has prepared a solo for us. That correct, haven't you?
Yes, sir.
Could you play us your solo?
Is there any part you prefer for me to play, the first part or the second part?
Maybe we can do a little both. We don't have
All
to play the whole thing, but maybe just a little bit so we can get a nice taste of it.
So I'll be playing Bore 1 and Bore 2 from the Bach Cello Suite.
Very cool.
This
Great.
Is, Jonathan Gomez, he's a sophomore. This is his second year playing bassoon.
Awesome.
Mr. Gomez, did you play anything before this? I can't recall. I don't
No,
think you
this
did.
is my first instrument.
All right, let's give it a go.
That's the Bore 1, and I'll play a little bit of Bore 2.
Okay. Very nice. Good job.
Thank you.
Good work. So a couple things I'm noticing, and the first thing right off the bat is for 2 years of playing the instrument, you already have a really great handle on it. A lot of good things, your fingers seems fluid, and it seems like you're blowing a nice, steady airstream through the instrument, which I find to be very important on the bassoon. The goal, the one thing I can share with you about playing the instrument, and sorry for the rest of you guys because this is going to be kind of talking a little bit shop on the bassoon, but the goal of the instrument is to keep the sound going, which means you got to keep the reed vibrating. So I think I noticed that you're doing that quite well, over the stream, is that you're still maintaining a good sound. But I think we can go a little bit further with it. And what I'm noticing is that when you reach the top, of your range in a certain spot of this solo, especially around, this happens a lot to me in like when you're playing a tenor D, like the D above the staff. Mm-hmm. I feel like we're kind of running out of steam a little bit, and it's tending to go a little bit flat. And musically, we're also losing kind of this, we're losing the musical momentum that you have set up so well when you're playing, at the start of a phrase, or you're playing in a more comfortable register. So let's go to the second, solo, the second beret one more time. And no matter what, just keep this, forward motion going even as you travel higher up. So that way we don't, lose that really nice pitch and nice sound.
All right.
Yeah. Let's just take those first couple of measures. I hear you have these first three notes that are they're just a gorgeous start. So just keep that going. Sing right through until just keep going. Don't even ever stop. Just keep singing through, even as you go back down in the phrase, and even as you come back up. One more time. Great. That's already I think 10 times more singing throughout. We didn't lose that singing style that you set up right in the very beginning. One last, we have I'm sure everyone's eager to play. So one more thing I want to try is along that same line of keeping things singing. Be careful not to tongue stop some of your articulations. And you've probably already heard this before because this is the world of bassoon that we live in. It's very easy to just tongue stop everything. So, or however you tongued it. Release those notes with your air and let them kind of ring in the room. Your tongue doesn't have to do as much work as you think it has to. It's really all about how your air is tapering and reattacking and rearticulating.
Okay.
One more time, and then we'll pick on somebody else. Yeah, that's already better. I would challenge you to work on finding how can you find the best quality of articulation that fits the music and also isn't limited by the bassoon and kind of the tropes that the bassoon falls into. And this goes for everybody in the class. It can really be easy to default into one style of articulation because of the instrument you play or because of the just seeing a dot on a page and recognizing that it's a staccato. But there are 50 million different forms of a staccato that you can play, and there are 50 million different forms of legato or marcato, and the list goes on and on. So I really, in my playing, I really try to think about what quality of staccato or marcato or legato makes sense when I'm playing. And on top of that, is there a tendency that my instrument has? So, for example, the bassoon, we have the tendency to have a really sharp, and I say pointed and tongue-stopped articulation. So if that's not what the piece requires, then I need to work maybe doubly hard to try to get something else. So quality of articulation is something that I really strive for musically, not just technically. Great. Well, thank you for playing. It sounds great. Yeah, absolutely.
You want to pick on someone else?
Yeah. Whoever is ready and willing, I guess. Next victim.
Mr. President, are you available?
Yes, sir, I am.
This is Jeremy Wallace. He's a tenor saxophone player. He's the band president, and he's an all right guy too. So maybe you got the aria, don't you?
Yes, the aria by Eugene Bozza. It's a very slow lyrical piece, and yeah.
Maybe a couple lines.
Yeah, a couple lines because this is very long. that's like the first phrase of it, I guess.
Very cool. Bravo. I love Bozza. You know, just such kind of romantic, like hard on your sleeve, you know, music like that. It's great. It's great. Very good. You have a quite beautiful vibrato. And I really hear that coming out on the long notes. You're really letting that vibrate really well. The kind of double-edged sword behind that, though, is some of the notes that you know aren't as comfortable with on the instrument, especially on these held notes. Your vibrato is kind of highlighting the fact that you're not as comfortable with some of these notes that you're hitting. And I'm speaking to this as a bassoonist, not as a tenor sax player. So I am not, you know, as familiar with the tendencies of this instrument. So this is coming from a very unbiased and, you know, hopefully not too harsh ear. But I noticed it most often on like the last two, you know, at the very end of the whole phrase. I noticed it in like some of the, like the last two notes you had. They weren't quite as comfortable and as singing as the, you know, first couple notes. So why don't you take it, you know, maybe more than halfway through and, you know, just find that first sustain note and hold it without vibrato. Let's get the most singing quality out of those notes first, and then we'll add the vibrato back in.
Gotcha.
Yeah, right here. That last note you just sustained, you couldn't help but put the vibrato back into it, right?
Yeah.
And so this is very similar to articulation, like we were talking about. You know, it's so easy to default on certain things, but we do it because of technical limitations, not because of musical ideas. So you know which note I'm talking about now, right?
Yeah.
So just play the run up to it and just get a nice big sound on it without relying on your vibrato to kind of sweeten it up a little bit.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's better. That's better. You're having a tendency to actually diminuendo into it though. Did you notice
Yeah,
that?
that's actually written in. It actually
Oh, okay.
crescendos into a pianissimo.
Okay. Maybe I wonder
Yeah.
if we can pace that diminuendo a little bit better though. And what I'm kind of noticing is more of a terrace right now. It's like ba da 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 da, and it makes the diminuendo a little too timid. So do me a favor and ignore the diminuendo for a second. Just really get the fullest sound out of those like three notes approaching into that one note. Because I like, you know, now that you told me that there's a diminuendo there, it does make sense, you know, what you were doing initially. However, again, we don't want to default into a diminuendo sounding like a timid phrase ending. Does that make sense? Yeah. So one more time, ignore the diminuendo, and then we'll add it back in so that way it sounds musical and not like an issue on the instrument.
Gotcha.
Great. Now, keep that same, just like we mentioned with the bassoon, keep the reed vibrating as you play this diminuendo and keep a healthy sound even as you get softer. Okay? Just that same quality of vibration that you got this time, only just add back in that diminuendo. Okay?
Gotcha.
Yeah, to me that you felt it, the note just sounded more comfortable, and there's not much other way I can describe it, because sure, you were doing what was printed on the page before, you were making that diminuendo happen, but what does that diminuendo imply? Does it imply timidness, or does it imply kind of sweetness and beauty, and these are the decisions we have to make, and the changes that we have to make in order to get the desired product. So from here, now that you've got that set up, you can add that vibrato back in, and really double the musical effectiveness that you had before. So we need to move on, but very nice job.
Thank you. Would you mind if we open it up some questions from some of the students for you?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm an open book, so anything that anybody wants to, ask.
Well, I'll start, and if anybody else has a question, they can come in after me. But could you I know that you're part of the President's Own Marine Corps band. Could you maybe tell us a little bit more about that experience, about being in that band, and maybe how you got there, and maybe just a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually a very new member to the band. I enlisted in January of this year, and I have started playing with the band since February. So right around the time that I was really getting into the full swing of things, we closed everything down, and we've all been quarantined. So
Yeah.
but from my experience thus far, I joined the band by taking an audition for them, just like they operate it just like a professional orchestra audition, which I was taking previously. I was working on a doctorate of bassoon performance, and I was basically on what we kind of affectionately call the audition circuit. So I was taking a lot of bassoon auditions, and I saw that there was some openings in some of the military bands, and I kind of, hopefully this isn't, especially since you guys are growing up in a band setting, and already I can tell you guys are all great players. You don't have the stigma that I had, but the stigma that I had was that as a professional musician, you didn't want to wind up in a military band, because a military band was going to be not much about music making, and it was just all going to be rigid, But the more I took to auditions and the more I learned about it, the more I realized that that's just not the case at all. It's a very prestigious musical organization. So then I started taking band auditions, and learning more about that. And I took an Army audition, and did well, but did not get that position. But then I did get the Marine band position, obviously. And that was in September. And then from there, you begin the process of enlisting, which is backwards from what the fleet bands of, like the Marine Corps fleet bands or the Army field bands, Army fleet bands or Bravo bands, what they do in any normal job in the military. You're going to enlist first and swear in first, and then you get your job assignment. But since they want, the best musical product, they do the audition first. So I had known I had gotten this position, but I, spent quite a number of months meeting the requirements and of enlistment. And it's a experience that you don't ever have to think about, or ever believe you're going to think about as a musician, is how to enlist in the military. But that all happened, and from then I have gotten to meet my colleagues in the band, and learn more about what we do, and it's been terrific. They pay for just about any musical thing I could possibly need: reed making, tools, instruments, repairs, and our function is we it's different every day. I feel very lucky that I get to be in a position where I can wear many hats. I can be a soloist, a chamber musician, play in the band, of course, play public concerts. We play in the White House. That's one of our main functions, is to provide music for the White House. So it's a very versatile group, and it's been great. I don't know if that's enough information, but I could say, yeah, I mean, previously before that, I was doing some freelancing auditions, like I said, and played in some smaller orchestras.
Guys, does anybody else have any questions?
How are the bass clarinet players in the Marine Corps band?
Well, I don't know
They're
if you got
awful.
to. Yeah, I don't know. So you mentioned that Shannon was here yesterday?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Oh, incredible. And that's something that I love about being in the low woodwind section is the bassoon and bass clarinet sections. We have to be best buddies because we're often doubling parts, or we're just like constantly relying on each other. And is it Mr. Gomez? If there is a bit of advice I can give you, it's learn how to sound as much like a bass clarinet as you can. And who is our bass clarinetist here?
Mr. Martinez.
And Mr. Martinez, do everything you can to learn about what makes a bassoon sound unique, because so often you just got to be absolutely in sync with one another. So all of that to say, I feel very comfortable with my colleagues in the bass clarinet section. They are outstanding musicians.
Fantastic. Any other questions, guys?
I have a question. If you could go back and tell yourself one thing you should practice every day, what would it be?
Scales.
Okay.
Yeah.
I told you.
Yep. 100%. 100%.
I didn't want to hear that.
Yeah. No. It just makes everything easier. If now that I'm, I've wisened up a little bit, from my time, even in college, I struggled with wanting to practice scales. If you have something in a tricky key and you just spend some time working on that scale without even looking at that, repertoire, it makes it just feel easy. It becomes easier. It takes everything back to square one. You never outgrow your scales. You never get too old or never think that you should be too good to play your scales, because it just takes everything back to basics and you feel grounded, and you relearn things about that scale. You learn new things about your instrument. It's all about scales. It's all about scales.
Any other questions, guys?
I was wondering, what got you first interested in music the most?
I think so much of it was my family. We were a very musical family. My sister she's a music educator in New York State. And she's my older sister, so I always looked up to her. So she was an inspiration. I was always kind of surrounded by music. And I did a lot of different musical things, throughout my time in school. I played a lot of different instruments. I've tried learning a lot of different instruments. So I was just kind of around it a lot, and just in that environment a lot.
I know we're getting close to the end. Does anybody have any other last minute questions, or I can give one?
Why the bassoon? Because not nobody. Most people don't really pick the bassoon.
Yeah, that's a great question. I started playing instruments on the violin, and I got to a point in like the third grade or whatever, and I just hated the thing. I couldn't practice it. I just couldn't stand playing violin. And so it was actually my mom who told me, hey, like said to herself actually, I don't want him to quit. He's got a good musical ear. I want him to keep trying this. He just needs something. He's a kind of a weird kid. He's kind of a nerdy guy. He just needs something that's a little goofy and a little unique because no one else plays it. And then I think he'll do it. And that's exactly what happened. I went to see Peter and the Wolf, and I was sold from then on.
You got to be the grandpa.
I had to be I had to be the grandpa.
Could we wrap up with maybe one last question about your practice regimen, your weekly practice regimen, or maybe how you got to here, something. These guys, I make them practice about 4 hours a week, and we do scales every day and things of that nature. But maybe some inspiration about practice. Practicing can be boring sometimes, right, Mr. Minatra? So we want to make sure that we spice it up a little bit. And maybe you can tell us how you got here, what's your weekly practice like, and maybe tied up with that.
Well, I try to make sure I'm pulling out the instrument 6 days a week. I try to make sure that I have a day off. I'm sometimes not good at that because the pressure of, life and my job, I want to make sure so sometimes I'm practicing every day. But at this point, I'm actually probably making reads more than I am practicing. That's just such a huge part of playing the instrument is I need to have a good read. So I probably put at least 2 hours into making reads every day. And hopefully I get, about 2 hours of practicing, although sometimes it's usually like an hour and a half. And when I was taking auditions and when I was really trying to improve on the instrument, and teaching, when I was still taking lessons and teaching myself how to play this thing, I was probably getting close to 3.5, 4 hours a day. But the only way I got there, and that's not to scare anyone here, because it's not like I was getting anywhere close to that when I was your guys' age. But the thing that I learned is that what's so important to that is if you're struggling to put in the time to practice, spend a little time figuring out why you don't want to practice. Like really be honest with yourself and ask yourself, is it because do I not have fun when I'm playing or practicing? Do I not enjoy playing my scales? And if that's true, that's nothing to be ashamed of, but that's, something you need to be honest with and learn, figure out, okay, what is it? Why am I not having fun playing my scales? Because I have a blast playing my scales now because I took the time to figure out how to make it fun, how to make it engaging. So that's important to spend a little bit of time. In terms of my actual practicing, I almost always start by playing a scale, and I play a lot of etudes, just because it puts a lot of notes on a page in front of me. So I'm just trying to really, really keep my fundamentals solidified. I don't need to practice repertoire as much anymore because I'm keeping my fundamentals in check. So fundamentals are key. If you guys have a band piece in front of you, even if it's in C major, practice your C major scale and practice a quick C major C major etude. Working on those fundamentals is just going to make your life easier, and you're going to have more fun playing that band piece, and you're just going to have more fun on the instrument.
Well, thank you very much. We really I know our time, but really appreciate you spending some time with us today. And I think I got a lot out of it. Montiel, did you get a lot out of it?
Yes, sir, I did.
Very good. All right.
Great.
Well, look forward to seeing you if you guys coming through town. I heard you guys are making a Tennessee stop at some point in the near future.
Yeah, I think that'll be next. As long as our tour stays as is, which, really hoping it will. We're doing a whatever you call it, the Southwest tier or tour or whatever. So that we'll be passing through Tennessee.
Well, if we need to help you set up a concert here in town, you can contact me anytime.
That would be great. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. I'm sorry I didn't get to hear everyone play, but wish you guys all the best, and stay healthy, and just keep practicing. Keep having fun making music.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Everybody clap your hands.